When I asked why I wasn't invited to the family vacation, my daughter-in-law sent a voice note to her friends. I pressed play and heard her laughing. Then she said, "Why would we bring her? She's not fun. She's furniture." The words stung like a slap. In that moment I realized they didn't just forget me, they mocked me. But instead of breaking down, I smiled, because they had no idea what I was about to do next. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to subscribe for more and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 62 years old, a widow, and the proud mother of my only son, Daniel. I raised him on my own after my husband passed away, and I poured every ounce of love and sacrifice into giving him a good life. Daniel grew into a hard-working young man with big dreams, and I was always proud of him. When he married Chloe, I hoped we would become a close family, but Chloe made it clear from the very beginning that she didn't see me as part of her world. She was polite in public, but in private, her eyes rolled at almost everything I did. I remember on our last family trip, I woke up early and cooked pancakes for everyone, just like I used to for Daniel when he was little. Chloe whispered to her friend, "She treats every vacation like a church potluck." I heard it, and I smiled, as if it didn't matter. But inside, I felt the sting of being dismissed. Still, I held on to the hope that with time, she would accept me. I wanted Daniel to have peace in his marriage, even if that meant I had to stay quiet. I thought family love was worth the silence. Until the day I learned that silence had turned me into a joke. The day I found out about the vacation started out like any other. I was in my kitchen, sipping on my morning coffee, when I noticed a message from Daniel. It was short, almost rushed. He said, "Mom, just wanted to let you know we'll be out of town next week. Chloe booked a family trip." My heart warmed at the word family. I typed back quickly, asking where we were going, what I should pack, and whether he wanted me to bring along some of his favorite cookies for the road. But then his reply came, and it wasn't what I expected. "Mom, actually you're not coming on this one." Chloe thought it might be less stressful if it was just us. Less stressful. Those two words hit me hard. I sat frozen, staring at the screen, my coffee growing cold in my hand. I tried to read it again, hoping I misunderstood, but the words were clear. I wasn't invited. My fingers trembled as I typed, "Daniel, why wouldn't I be invited? Aren't I family too?" I hesitated before pressing send, but my chest was heavy, and I needed to know the truth. His typing bubble appeared, then disappeared. Minutes passed before he finally responded, "Mom, please don't take it the wrong way. Chloe just wants to keep things simple." Simple. I was being cut out for the sake of simplicity. I could feel my throat tighten. Memories of all the sacrifices I had made for him flooded my mind. Working double shifts when he was in college, sewing his torn clothes late at night, skipping meals so he never had to. And now, the reward for all that was being told that my presence made life complicated. Still, I wanted to hear Chloe's reasoning directly. So I sent her a polite voice message. "Hi Chloe, I heard about the vacation. I just wanted to make sure. Am I not invited? Maybe I misunderstood. I waited all day." No reply. Then, late at night, my phone buzzed. It was a forwarded voice note. At first, I thought maybe she was finally explaining. I pressed play. The sound of laughter filled the air. I heard Chloe's voice mixed with her friends. She was speaking casually, without a care in the world. "Why would we bring her? She's not fun. She's furniture." Then came another burst of laughter. My hand tightened around the phone. My chest burned. Not with sadness this time, but with something deeper. A mixture of humiliation and anger. Furniture. To her, I wasn't a person with feelings, or a mother who had given her life to this family. I was an object, something to sit in the background, silent and unnoticed. I felt my cheeks flush with heat, and tears threatened to spill, but I refused to let them fall. Instead, I pressed replay. I listened again and again, as if trying to confirm that the cruelty was real, that I wasn't imagining it. Each time the word furniture echoed, the pain cut deeper, but so did my resolve. I couldn't help but think back to the times Chloe dismissed me before. At Christmas dinner, when I brought out the old family recipes, she pushed her plate away and said, "We don't really eat heavy food like this anymore." At Daniel's birthday, when I wrapped a gift with care, she laughed, "You really don't need to give him things like that. He's not a child." Every moment I had brushed aside as harmless was now proof of how little she respected me. Daniel, caught in the middle, tried to call me later that night. His voice was apologetic, soft, almost ashamed. "Mom, please don't be upset. Chloe didn't mean it like that." I stayed quiet, letting him talk, but in my heart, I knew this wasn't a slip of the tongue. This was how she truly saw me. And the worst part was that my son, the boy I had raised with every ounce of love I had, was standing by her side instead of mine. I lay awake for hours that night, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying the laughter over and over. I asked myself if I had done something wrong, if maybe I had been too overbearing, too present in their lives. But deep down, I knew the truth. No matter what I did, Chloe had already decided who I was in her eyes, a burden, an extra, furniture. And as that realization settled in, something inside me shifted. I was tired of being silent. I was tired of pretending disrespect didn't matter. I may have been pushed aside, but I wasn't going to stay there. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of strength rising. The pain was real, but so was the determination building inside me. If Chloe thought I would simply fade into the background, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. The morning after hearing that cruel voice note, I woke up with swollen eyes from lack of sleep. For hours, I had wrestled with the humiliation of being called furniture. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Chloe's laughter. But as the sun came through my window, a different feeling replaced the pain. I realized I had two choices. I could let their cruelty define me, or I could remind them that I was far more than a silent piece of furniture in the corner of their lives. I sat at the kitchen table with a pad of paper in front of me. I started writing down everything that had happened. The messages, the voice note, the way Daniel's voice sounded weak and guilty. At first, it felt like I was simply venting, but as the pen moved across the page, a plan began to form. I didn't want a screaming match. I didn't want to humiliate my son. What I wanted was to reclaim my dignity. If Chloe thought excluding me would make her look powerful in front of her friends, then perhaps showing up with quiet grace would remind her that real strength doesn't need mockery. I turned on my laptop and searched for the resort they were going to. It was a luxury property I had only seen in magazines. White sand beaches, infinity pools, private villas. For a moment I hesitated. Could I really go there alone? Wouldn't it make me look desperate? But then I remembered Chloe's words again, sharp and cutting. Furniture, number. I wouldn't go there to beg for space. I would go there to show that my presence had meaning, not only to my family, but to the people who truly valued me. That thought reminded me of Richard Grant. I had met Richard 2 years earlier through a community literacy program where I volunteered. He was the kind of man who carried authority without ever needing to raise his voice. A successful CEO, respected by everyone in town, but also kind, thoughtful, and surprisingly humble. We had stayed in touch casually, sharing updates about the program, occasionally meeting at fundraisers. I knew he had recently mentioned expanding his company and looking for new leadership talent. Daniel's name had even come up in conversation once, though only in passing. On impulse, I picked up the phone and called him. My voice shook at first, but when Richard answered warmly, I felt steadier. I explained the situation, not the petty details of Chloe's insult, but the fact that I was feeling overlooked by my family and wanted to do something different for myself. I was thinking of taking a trip, I said carefully, and I wondered if you might like to join. The resort has plenty of activities, and I know you've been saying you need a break from work. There was a pause, and then he chuckled. Maggie, you have no idea how perfect your timing is. I was just telling my assistant I needed to get out of the office before I burned myself out. Send me the details. I'll book the time off. As soon as I hung up, my heart was pounding. For the first time in days, I felt a rush of excitement. Not only was I going to the same resort, but I would arrive with a man whose presence commanded respect. More importantly, I would arrive with someone who saw me as a person, not as a burden. The week before the trip was a blur of preparation. I bought a few new dresses, nothing flashy but elegant enough to make me feel confident. I had my hair trimmed and styled, and for the first time in years, I stood in front of the mirror and truly admired my reflection. It wasn't about vanity. It was about reclaiming the parts of myself I had buried under years of compromise and silence. Packing my suitcase, I thought of Daniel. I knew he was torn, stuck between loyalty to his wife and love for his mother. I didn't want to make his life harder, but I also couldn't allow myself to be erased. He needed to see that his mother still had strength, dignity, and a life beyond the role Chloe had shoved me into. On the day of departure, I met Richard at the airport. He greeted me with a warm smile and insisted on carrying my bag. Walking beside him, I felt a strange mixture of nerves and anticipation. The whispers of Chloe's laughter still lingered in my mind, but now they felt faint, like a storm passing into the distance. Ahead of me was calm, clarity, and the chance to show that no matter what others thought of me, I still had the power to decide how I would be seen. As the plane lifted off, I looked out of the window at the clouds below. I thought of Chloe and her friends, so sure that I would be sitting at home, forgotten. I whispered to myself, "Let's see who looks like furniture now." The resort shimmered like something out of a postcard. Palm trees lined the entrance, their leaves swaying in the warm ocean breeze. The sound of waves crashing in the distance was a steady rhythm under the hum of laughter and chatter from arriving guests. My heart raced as Richard and I stepped out of the car. A valet rushed forward to take our luggage, and the staff greeted us with bright smiles and cool drinks. For a moment, I almost forgot why I was here. But then I saw them. Across the lobby, Daniel and Chloe were checking in with her two friends. Chloe wore oversized sunglasses and a flowing sundress, the picture of someone who thought she owned the world. Her friends giggled around her, each of them clutching their designer handbags like trophies. Daniel stood beside them, looking tired, his shoulders slightly slumped the way they always did when he was caught between pleasing Chloe and staying true to himself. My chest tightened, but I kept my head high. Richard, noticing my hesitation, leaned close and whispered, "You've got this." His confidence was contagious. I straightened my back and walked forward, every step steady, deliberate, unshaken. The moment Chloe noticed me, her smile froze. Her sunglasses slid down just enough for me to see her eyes widen. She grabbed Daniel's arm, whispering something sharply. But it was too late. I was already there. "Daniel," I said warmly. "What a surprise!" His head whipped around, his mouth opening and closing as though he had seen a ghost. "Mom? What are you? How?" Before he could finish, Richard stepped forward with a polite, commanding presence. "Daniel, I've heard so much about you. Maggie's told me what a dedicated worker you are. I've been looking for someone with your skills at my company. We should sit down this week and talk about an opportunity." The look on Chloe's face was priceless. Her lips parted in shock, her cheeks turning pink, and for the first time since I had known her, she was completely speechless. Her friends stared between Richard and me, whispering among themselves. One of them muttered, "Is that Richard Grant? The Richard Grant?" I could see Chloe's jaw tighten. The laughter she had shared at my expense just days ago was nowhere to be found. Daniel's confusion melted into disbelief, and then into something like pride. "Mom, you know Richard Grant?" Richard chuckled. "She doesn't just know me, Daniel. She's been one of the most reliable people I've worked with in the community. You should be proud of her." I glanced at Daniel. His eyes softened as he looked at me, as if for the first time in years he was seeing me clearly, not as the woman Chloe had painted me to be, but as the mother who had always stood strong. Chloe tried to recover. She adjusted her sunglasses and forced a smile. "Well, isn't this unexpected? Maggie, I didn't know you'd be here." Her voice dripped with false sweetness, but the tremor in her tone gave her away. I didn't rise to her bait. I simply smiled. calm and collected. Life is full of surprises, Chloe. Her friends exchanged awkward glances, clearly sensing the shift in power. They weren't laughing now. They were watching me. For once, Chloe wasn't the center of attention. The next few minutes were a blur of introductions, polite small talk, and Daniel stumbling through questions about the job Richard had just mentioned. But the most important part wasn't the words spoken. It was the silence. Chloe stayed quiet, her forced smile glued in place, her hands tightening around the strap of her purse. Every second of that silence was louder than her mocking laughter had been in that voice note. When Richard excused himself to take a call, I lingered with Daniel and Chloe. Daniel leaned closer to me, his voice low. "Mom, I didn't know she said those things. I swear I didn't. If I had, I touched his arm gently. Daniel, I'm not here to embarrass you. I'm here because I needed to remind myself of my worth, and maybe remind you too." His eyes grew glossy, and for a brief second, I saw the boy he once was. The boy who used to hold my hand when he was nervous. The boy who once promised he'd always take care of me. Chloe, on the other hand, could only stand there, stiff and silent. Every word Richard had spoken in my favor was a blow to the image she had tried to build. She had mocked me as furniture, but now she was the one standing in the background while others paid attention to me. As we walked away to check in, I could feel the weight of every eye in that lobby. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't dismissed. I wasn't furniture. I was a woman who had faced humiliation with dignity, and who had chosen to rise instead of crumble. The satisfaction wasn't in Chloe's silence or her flushed cheeks. It was in reclaiming my own strength. She had wanted me out of the picture, but instead, I had stepped into the center of it, with grace, with dignity, and with the quiet power of knowing that I didn't need her approval to shine. That evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon, the resort seemed to glow with golden light. Richard and I sat by the ocean, sipping iced tea while waves rolled gently against the shore. The air was warm and calm, a sharp contrast to the storm of emotions I had carried with me for weeks. For the first time in a long while, I felt at peace, but peace didn't mean everything had been solved. Later that night, Daniel knocked on the door of my villa. He looked nervous, his hair messy from running his hands through it, a habit he had since childhood. I invited him in, and he sat on the edge of the chair, his shoulders heavy with guilt. "Mom," he began quietly, "I don't know what to say. I didn't realize how much Chloe's words had hurt you. I should have stood up for you. I should have done more." His voice cracked with regret, and I could see that part of him was ashamed. Not just of Chloe's cruelty, but of his own silence. I placed my hand on his. "Daniel, you're my son. I love you more than anything in this world. I'm not angry at you, but I need you to understand something. Respect in a family isn't optional. It's the foundation. When your wife mocked me, and when you stayed silent, it wasn't just about a vacation. It was about my place in your life." He looked at me with teary eyes, whispering, "I see it now. I promise I'll never let her treat you like that again." I smiled softly. Promises are good, but actions matter more. I don't need big gestures, Daniel. I just need to know I am seen, that I matter, that the years I spent raising you didn't make me disposable the moment you got married. He nodded, and for the first time in years, I felt like my words had reached him. There was no anger between us, just truth. Sometimes the hardest lessons in families are not about arguments, but about silence, and the courage it takes to break that silence. The days that followed at the resort were filled with small victories. Chloe kept her distance, her smile strained whenever I walked by with Richard. Her friends were polite but awkward around me, no longer giggling like they had in that voice note. I didn't need to confront them directly. My presence with dignity, my ability to hold my head high, and the respect Richard openly showed me had already spoken louder than any argument ever could. One afternoon, while Daniel and Richard sat together, discussing the details of a potential position, I walked along the beach alone. I thought about everything that had led me here. The sleepless nights, the cruel laughter, the temptation to break down and accept my place in the shadows. But instead of collapsing, I had chosen to rise. Not for revenge, not to show off, but to prove to myself that I was not the person Chloe tried to define me as. Standing there with the ocean stretching endlessly before me, I realized the greatest transformation wasn't in how Chloe now saw me. It was in how I saw myself. I was no longer afraid of being unwanted, because I had finally remembered my own worth. On the last day of the trip, Daniel hugged me tightly before we left the resort. "Thank you for coming, Mom," he said, his voice full of sincerity. "You reminded me of something I should never forget, that family means standing together, not tearing each other down." As I hugged him back, I felt the weight of years of silence begin to lift. Chloe might never apologize, and maybe she never would change, but I no longer needed her approval to feel whole. My son had seen the truth, and I had reclaimed the respect I deserved. When I returned home, I reflected on it all. Life has a way of testing us through the people closest to us. Sometimes it's not strangers who hurt us the most, but those within our own family. Yet even in those moments of betrayal, we have the power to decide how we respond. I could have crumbled under Chloe's words, but instead, I chose strength, and that choice changed everything. To anyone listening who has ever been dismissed, mocked, or treated as invisible, remember this: your worth is not defined by those who laugh at you. Your worth is defined by the dignity you carry and the courage you show when life tries to push you aside. That trip didn't just change how Chloe saw me, it changed how I saw myself. And that was the greatest victory of all. If you found this story powerful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share in the comments where in the world you're watching from.